Dissect. I'm here with White House reporters Jonathan Weisman of the Wall Street Journal and Washington Posts Michael Shear. Jonathan, I want to start with you. This week we tried to figure out what happened with these AIG bonuses. Who knew what, when? What do we know at the end of the week?
At the end of the week, we certainly know that Tim Geithner knew about this at least 2 weeks ago. And it didn't blow up, of course, until he got that final call from AIG on last Tuesday night saying, you know what, these bonuses are going through. He calls back on last Wednesday, to the AIG CEO, Edward Liddy, says, try to stop this now. Liddy calls him back on Friday, says, sorry, we can't stop it. Geithner basically green lights it on Friday. The whole thing blows up over the weekend. But remember, there was a story in the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg in early January saying that AIG was going to give $450 million in bonuses to these financial products guys. This was an open secret.
Michael, the first reaction from White House officials on Sunday was, our hands are tied. We tried to jawbone them. These bonuses are still going to get paid out. But then suddenly, a couple of days later, it's outrage, which has been the word of the week. What happened, and where are we now at the end of the week in terms of this mess?
Right. Well, basically what you had is the White House learned about this on Thursday, just before the bonuses were given out. There was a meeting in the Roosevelt Room on Sunday afternoon, went into Sunday evening. They all talked about this. This is after Sunday morning's expressions of, well, there's not much we can do about it. Clearly, the president didn't think that was good enough and ordered his folks sort of back to the drawing table, said, I want to still explore, I want the lawyers to explore everything there is that we can do. And of course, he went out the next day and jumped on the outrage bandwagon and essentially helped to kind of whip things up some more. Now, it's probably pretty clear that Congress was going to get whipped up anyway, whatever Obama had to say. But you saw the president really not backing down, even as some folks, pundits and others, were saying, look, maybe this isn't so wise to sort of fan the flames of all this. The president said then on Wednesday, look, I people are right to be angry. I don't want to quell the anger.
That's right. But some of the anger that he's created is now aimed at his Treasury Secretary. Is Geithner in danger?
I think Geithner is in danger. I mean, look, they're not going to let Geithner go now. It would be a disaster. I mean, the whole point is they're trying to bring stability to the markets, and they hardly have anyone at the Treasury Department confirmed already. You think they're going to let the Treasury Secretary go? But these are ticks on the mark. It's weakening Geithner, and the question is, in 6 months, can he still be standing?
Can he come out and give a bank bailout plan, given how low his stock is, his personal stock is now? Does he have any credibility to come out and say, here's how we're going to rescue the banks?
Well, I'll tell you, the biggest problem he faces is not necessarily his own credibility. If Congress goes ahead, pushes through these bills to tax these bonuses, he's got his whole bank bailout is predicated on public-private partnerships. Hedge funds and private equity firms coming in and sharing the burden of buying up these toxic assets. And right now, they're ready to flee.
Right. But
Geithner's going to have a whole hard time getting a lot of people participating in the program.
Right, Jonathan, I agree. But remember one thing about Barack Obama and his team, and that is that they operate best in this sort of calm mode, that when everybody around them is sort of predicting disaster and that the world is going to come to an end, whether that world involves his campaign and whether his campaign was going to fall apart when the bitter comments were surfaced or the race issues came up. I mean, what they do is they sort of look past the current crisis to the sort of end game, and they try to sort of manage the current crisis in a way that won't affect the end game. And so you have a sort of sense of calm at the White House that this too shall pass. They'll get past whatever the problems are, fundamentally with the bank bailout, and I think you'll see the Obama people trying over the next few days to kind of move on.
But this clearly was not. I mean, this week began. It's supposed to be about talking about the budget, and it was supposed to be about small business tax cuts, and they are way away from that.
That's
Jonathan, I want to ask you another question. There's also collateral damage here for other people, and Chris Dodd is one of them. You wrote about Dodd this week, the senator who chairs the banking committee. Tell us about what's happening with Dodd and the back and forth between him and the Treasury Secretary.
Yeah, this is a horrible, terrible, interesting story in Washington. I mean, Chris Dodd had authored a very stern executive compensation limitation proposal that went into the stimulus bill. There was another executive compensation proposal by Ron Wyden and Olympia Snowe, 2 other senators. Those compensation proposals specifically went back and taxed bonuses of TARP recipients, of bailout funds, even though it was retroactive. Now, the administration was openly opposed to these things. We wrote in January about how Tim Geithner and Larry Summers, the director of the National Economic Council, were up on the Hill trying to water down, trying to do something about these executive compensation proposals. In closed-door meetings, negotiations between the House and the Senate, the Wyden proposal on bonuses was yanked out completely, and the proposal that Dodd had, which would have capped total salaries, had a provision inserted that said that this provision does not impact existing contracts.
And that's the provision through which AIG was driven, and Dodd is in a tough spot politically.
That's right. Dodd is running for re-election next year, but he's already running. I mean, right now, he's got this guy Rob Simmons, a former Republican congressman from Connecticut, declaring against him. The polls look like he's in trouble. Dodd's left twisting in the wind.
He looks like the guy to blame for this. Geithner ultimately had to come out and say, no, actually, we did push him.
But he left him swinging for about 2 days with chyrons flashing over the news channels saying Dodd did it, even though Dodd had actually said, I did it at the behest of the Treasury Department. But somehow that never registered.
Collateral damage. Jonathan Weisman, thanks very much.
Thank
Michael
you.
Shear, thank you very much.
Sure.
You're watching Washington Unplugged on CBSNews.com.